This is awesome. I look at what he's done over the last year being in charge, and each person that I've connected with, the people that he's brought in, get so energized talking with them. And it's clear that there's a vision here. There's a plan in place to get to where we want to be. And my goal is always playoff baseball, winning playoff series in Chicago, and getting a taste of that in a major league dugout is obviously very intoxicating. And that's where I want to be. So we have high goals. We know it's going to take a lot of effort and energy to get there, but it's very clear that Chris has a great vision and he's bringing really elite game changing people on board.
Welcome, Ryan. But game-changing assembly of personnel, a vision of what the White Sox will become. Welcome to another edition of the FutureSox podcast. My name is Ian Eskridge. Joining me, as always, is James Fox. How are you, James?
I am good, sir. What's going on?
Just breaking down, and this is one of the things we're going to go through tonight is to break down exactly what Ryan Fuller is coming through with, as far as a philosophy, and to see exactly how the White Sox are going to change here, hopefully, at least, with the developmental side of the White Sox farm system. And hopefully it'll work, up to the major league side as well. That's pretty much what we're looking at here this week. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of wondering just how quickly we see some of the differences, right? Or because I do think we've kind of speculated a lot that this role would be like somebody similar to what Brian Bannister is doing, and obviously Brian Bannister had a ton of experience. We'll talk about Ryan Fuller. He's 34. He has experience, right? But Brian Bannister pitched in the big leagues. There's a lot there, and he was doing a lot. Draft side, development side, big league side. And I think we saw his fingerprints really early in last year's offseason. I'm just wondering with Fuller if it's similar, and it's, they have the hitters lab now is called Fuller House. It's like a nice blended family.
Nice.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, all good. I'm after listening to his presser the other day, very optimistic about what we've heard. If you guys haven't listened to the presser with Fuller, there's a lot of stuff. We're going to go through some of the clips. I got 5 more clips here of just things about that are going to answer some of the questions about what you're going to see from Ryan Fuller in as a what his role will be and how he plans to change some things to make some things for the better. I'll go ahead and move into the first clip here about some of his plans here.
Excited for this. It's definitely a different position, but it's one I feel like I have been doing in a sense over the last 5 years. Have experience as a minor league coordinator where you are helping shape the minor league system and having it be a consistent system from the Dominican Republic all the way through the big league club. So it's something I feel like I've been doing already. The major league side, gaining that experience the last 3 years too. So leveraging that experience, helping Marcus at the major league side, working with our minor league coordinators and coaches, and really empowering the coaches, giving them the best resources, giving them the best data to then bring information to the players in a really simple and sticky manner is what I look forward to doing. And that's going to take connecting with all different departments. And I look forward to creating that synergy, not just in the hitting department, but across the analysts, research and development, the strength staff. It's going to take all different departments. So really leveraging all our people and departments to make this thing really run at a high level. Excited for this. It's definitely a different position, but it's one I feel like I have
3 main takeaways that I took from the answer for this. And one of the things that I really enjoyed was the empowering coaches with the best resources and best data. So that flies in the face of what's been happening here with, 2 different sets of data, not knowing exactly what it was which set of data to use for what, and all the nonsense that they had going on, which was completely just off-putting, to hear from a fan, slash, outside, way outside analyst type of thing, when we're looking at our farm system and the ability to be able to give the info to the players in what a term that I really liked was simple and sticky manner, something that's going to stick in their brain, something that they're going to remember.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's good. I mean, I know, like, I think this is like a happy day, a happy show, but like, it's just every time something like this happens, like, it's just further like, how were they not already doing this? Like, it just does, like, it's just insane. And like, we've kind of been talking about it, like, oh, they need a director of hitting because it'll make things, and like, then you hear him talk and you're just like, yeah, I'm pretty sure everybody always has always done this. Like, this is like the right way to do it, right? They're so far behind. And it's good, like, they're, whatever, right? Like, you want to give Getz credit or whoever, like, for finally doing the right thing, like, that's fine. And I'm thrilled that we'll be able to like kind of track this and follow it. And he sounds like a really smart guy, but my God, man, like, it's just, it's just crazy.
Yeah, another thing that he mentioned here, which is something that was apparently like a huge thing. Like the saying goes, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. One thing that he is talking about doing is connecting and leveraging all the departments to work together and create a synergy between the analysts and the strength departments, which, again, how was this not a thing before that? I don't know, but it is exciting to somebody, that is in our role in
Right.
watching this franchise.
Yeah, I mean, it's like one singular hitting philosophy, right? But it's all encompassing because all like guys are different, right? So like everybody has like their heat zone. I love like it seems like he didn't bring up the point system, but it seems like it's similar. Like that's coming because he was on Saturday Morning with Bruce Levine as well, and he kind of like something Bruce asked him about strikeouts and how much he cares about him, and he kind of danced around it a little bit, but he basically just said like it depends, or no, you know what, he didn't ask about, he asked about swing and miss like in general, and he was like, it's just, it depends on where you're like swinging and missing. Like if like you don't make any in zone contact, he's like, well, then your career's not going to last very long. Like he was pretty honest about it, so that was like the whole thing with the Orioles was swing decisions, knowing where like your zone is, and then hitting the ball hard in the air, like on a line, like when that happens, right? So that's something new. I do think like it's not a money ball, go up there and like try to walk every time thing, but like the walks come, when you're not swinging at pitches that you shouldn't swing at. So
Yeah, when you're
it is a bit of a
disciplined.
change, but
Yeah, it's a definite discipline philosophy change. And I don't mean to be the guy who's all sunshine and roses over here, but this is going to be a pretty positive podcast in general because we are also going to later go over the Baseball America Statcast numbers on a uh, org wide level here, and earlier this week, Baseball America decided to rank all of the systems by some certain criteria. We will go over that in a little bit, but spoiler alert, it's not bad. We have some things to look forward to here, I think. Let's go ahead and move on to Ryan Fuller's philosophy of how he thinks he's going to help the White Sox system.
Certainly going to treat everybody as an individual. That's what they are. We're going to find those skills and attributes that make them have the superpowers that they have and try and leverage the areas to make them even better. But the overarching philosophy that I always go by, and I think you'll hear it from a lot of hitting coaches, is one, going in with a great game plan so we can control the zone. That's kind of the line of scrimmage where that battle starts. And if we're swinging at pitches over the heart of the plate, you're going to make contact. And when you make contact on pitches over the heart, you're going to have those damaged balls that are going to be high end exit velo on a line in the air. But everyone says that, what do I believe in? How do you make it come to be each day with what you do? And as hitting coaches, there's so much outside of your control. But really, the key phases that I see is 3 areas: educating our coaches and players at a really high level, helping them understand what they do very well, what success looks like, educating them every day. And then 2, how we train. This is definitely something in my past with the Orioles that we really leverage. We're not the most resourced team, but we loved training at a higher level than everyone else. So making sure we're building our skill, but then testing it every single night to make sure we're game ready and battle tested. And then the third piece, game planning. And it's especially one thing Marcus and I have talked about so far: refining the approaches, help guys understand what their strengths are, where they need to look in the zone, and making sure that they feel matchup proof regardless of who's on the mound each night.
Just diving on in.
So philosophy, everything sounds like it's a, he's got plans for everything. I think that, it's a very awesome to hear that he's got individual plans for each and every player. We're not just doing, I mean, we are doing a blanket philosophy, but we're not, because he realizes that different guys do different things better. A Riku Nishida is not going to be a Wilfred Veras, no matter what he does. Helping them to understand exactly what it is that they're going to be able to do to maximize whatever skill sets that they have is obviously very important.
Well, it does seem like at the big league level too, like the thing that's like over is like Jake Berger bringing out like his own hitting machine that him and like Gavin Sheets use, and then the rest of the team just kind of does whatever the hell they want because they feel like it, or they don't take BP because they don't want to, or that sort of thing. Like that, I think those days are over, right? Like this isn't like destined to work, but it has a much better chance of working than anything they've ever done, just because of like an actual process, right? It's like top down. I think like, he's the hitting equivalent of Brian Bannister. Is he going to be as good as Brian I don't know, right? But it makes a lot of sense. And then you make a lot of hires under him. Obviously, it seems like Marcus Timms is hanging around. So philosophically, they're likely aligned, and I would guess. So yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty interesting. Like, kind of goes in line too with like some of the guys that they've drafted and acquired. It's not a bunch of free swinging guys. Now they're not all a bunch of power hitters either, but it's a bunch of guys that make a lot of contact and like have plate patience too. So I think it's kind of interesting. I'm just, I'm curious, like once the season gets started, to like see how and where he like spends his time. Like where is, because I think like, look, he can make the biggest impact by developing 10 or 12 hitters like throughout the minors, more so than like in the big leagues. But I do think like he'll have big league impact too. I don't know if in the press conference did he talk about Anthony Santander at all, because he did Saturday morning with Bruce. It was a little bit interesting. So Santander is like, I guess, one of these guys that really credits him and the other young hitting coach that was in Baltimore that's now with the Twins, who we talked about. So, the Orioles hired 2 like 31-year-old hitting coaches like a couple of years ago. And some of the veterans on the team, like Santander was, he was struggling. He was a Rule 5 pick. And he's about to get $90 million on the open market, basically. And Fuller kind of talked about that. He said, he was a little apprehensive at first to trust a 31-year-old, but, he said that he was just really smart, and he kind of listened and basically like turned his career around. And Fuller said he just kind of, learned a ton from Anthony Santander too, just with like how to, like approach certain things. So I think that's interesting. Like if we get any of those, bounce back candidates.
Yeah. One thing that I mentioned off stream that, kind of sticks in my head, he was a high school coach at one point, and a high school teacher. And he kind of, has that feeling of that high school teacher that everybody at the school loved the class that they were in, and thought that he was their, everybody's favorite teacher. Everybody that went to high school remembers those favorite teachers that they had. He kind of reminds me of that in the fact that he's able to relate very well, and able to just, push concepts as opposed to just throwing facts at you. And I think that let's hope that translates well. Speaking of, before we get to some of the comments here in the comment section, I'm going to go ahead and bring up this clip here about how Ryan Fuller is talking to Marcus Timms and how he is going to help Marcus Timms work the hitters.
Yeah, speaking to consistency, it's key for these guys to develop relationships. And then someone like Marcus, he's been fantastic to work with so far. We've been on Zoom calls virtually every day, talking to each other, asking a lot of questions of what's going on, what can we make improvements to, how can I support you even more? And both of us talking about experiences working with really high level hitters, talking about what we can do as we look towards the player plans for the White Sox hitters going into 2025. So it's been great so far. We match up really well, and it's been a great working relationship so far. And I know it's one that we'll continue to work at moving forward.
So, as you had mentioned, and it was one thing that we had all wondered about whether Marcus Timms was sticking around or not. Clearly he is. And, from all accounts that we've heard is that he is an easy guy to work with and seems to do a fairly good job of communicating. And I think having an additional layer of clarity from the analyst side is going to make a pretty big difference for Marcus Timms.
Yeah, I think so. And I think he was like in kind of a tough spot, at least last year to start too. Cause we had, who was the Mike Tozar like around too, was like the assistant hitting coach. He was definitely, and now it's like, it even looks crazier, right? Like that you could tell that, like, I think Chris Getz probably would have fired Pedro Grifol sooner if he were able to. And Pedro had his assistant still on board. And then like the front office hired their own coaches that were like mixed onto the staff. And it's just, so at least he'll be starting from, a place of strength. And I would imagine they add an assistant hitting coach, like on the big league side. Who knows how many more minor league coaches are coming. Revamped R&D department might actually get them the things that they need, supposedly. So, we'll see. I think this is a super interesting hire. I wanted a guy like this. I think I told you off air too. Like, obviously we knew they were getting a new manager. I wanted a new international director. They did that. I wanted a director of hitting, and I wasn't really sure that they were going to, but then they did. And it's this guy. And I'm like curious, like where else he could have gone. Like did he prefer this to a big league hitting coach job? Was this available anywhere else? Like who do you think hires Ryan Fuller? Like, is this what Getz is doing? Because it seems like Getz is kind of just like hiring so many people that I'm not really sure exactly what he does. Like, he's going to get credit when good players are acquired, and he's going to get blamed when they make bad trades. But he's really insulated himself, like as far as like from a decision making like standpoint. I feel like.
Yeah, it feels like there is just piles on top of piles of guys who are fitting into specific roles, but they all are in multiple roles doing all sorts of crazy things. And here's what Ryan Fuller has to say about what exactly his role is going to be with the White Sox.
So drafting well, developing well, and then at the major league side, helping acquire well. And very proud of what we did there, kind of becoming a destination for bounceback candidates, hitters that maybe haven't had the best years over the last couple of years, but getting them back to being really productive big leaguers, and then getting them that next contract and helping us at the same time. So look.
I mean, essentially what we're looking at is exactly what we were talking about. What we wanted was a Brian Bannister, but on the hitting side, is that he's going to be instrumental in the drafting, the developmental side, and acquiring guys that are potential bounce back candidates as well, which to me is interesting because I wasn't entirely sure that that's exactly what we were going to be getting, but I'm all for it if that's if that's part of his purview.
Yeah, I mean, Baltimore had a guy like Ryan O'Hearn, who did pretty well this year, and then they like picked up his option for 7-8 million, I think. Which, look, I mean, maybe we see some of these guys sign, and you're like, oh, that guy was kind of bad last year, right? And then it's like, okay, well, maybe they see something that they think they can figure out a little bit there. I know Beef Loaf was listening, or might be still. I wonder if he has a list put together of like post hype guys that they can sign that were supposed to be good that aren't. I'm sure there's a whole host of guys that the White Sox could give it bats to if they wanted to.
Oh, I know he's got that list. Speaking of Mr. Beefloaf here, says, how much you think Ryan Fuller is going to spend on the Amazon Prime account to get the resources lined up for this position? 2 million, 3 million? I mean, I know 100% that he is on, he's already been sitting there perusing, all of the various analytical tools, whether it be, driveline stuff or, the like, trying to find, getting all, improving the amount of cameras that they've got and all sorts of tech stuff, all sorts.
Well, yeah, because it wasn't it like when Berger was using that hitting machine or whatever, like they didn't have it on the road, or like he brought his or something.
I don't even know.
Yeah, it was like he used like the 3D hitting device thing like pregame or the at the cell, but then they didn't have it on the road. It was like this. I remember when that, and then they traded him probably because he like outed them for being cheap asses. So then Kenny Williams decided to trade him for Jake Eater, but.
Yeah, I mean, hey, this is one of those things, and it kind of is, something we've come to expect from the White Sox, is that a guy goes somewhere else and says, hey, things are different elsewhere. They're not this way with the White Sox. And it's not necessarily that he bounced back and was like the, an all-star, all-pro MVP candidate or anything, but there were definite things that he said when he got to Miami that were like, this is something I've never heard before, and I'm getting different input from the coaching staff here that has helped me improve my game. And I'm hoping that this is the kind of thing that will get us into that, level of, hey, you can come here and work with some of our staff, and some of them will be able to repair the things that you are doing incorrectly that maybe somebody else didn't see.
Yeah, no, it was like pretty eye opening. I mean, I don't know. Like we know like the stuff that like their shortcomings, right? So it's like not always that surprising. But yeah, the Miguel Sano comment like from Beefloaf, that's funny. He fits my like want for like a fat guy too, which is good.
Yeah, no, I saw the Miguel Sano thing, and I was like, okay, yeah, I could see that working, if they can figure out a way to minimize his swing and miss and maximize his hit tool. I mean, I'm all for it. That guy can hit the ball a ton.
Yeah.
Question here. So you think Santander gets 4/90 to 100? I think that's a little bit rich. What do you think?
He might get it over 5. I think.
Yeah. 5 over 100, 20 a year.
Yeah,
I
I'm
could
not
see
sure he
him
gets
doing that
100, but I mean,
possibly.
yeah, if he signs for 5 at 85 with somebody, like, yeah, I mean, that I could see that. I mean, he's 31, I think. He might be older than that. But I mean, he was pretty good last year, and this free agent class isn't very good. So if you want bats, like he's going to get paid.
Yeah. So I got one more thing here, and this is something that we have this is something we've wondered about because, as Trey mentions here, it's a red flag that the Orioles didn't want him anymore, but I'll be optimistic. And the thing that I know that I've talked to Trey, and one of the things that he said was that he was worried, like that he's going to try and get everybody to hit the ball in the air, and that's going to be the sole focus, and that's what they're going to do every single time. And I think that this is a good answer in that in a return to that line of thinking.
Great question. It's one I love. I think about the identity of really good teams, and one that I really pride myself on helping create is a team that's dynamic. And it's whatever challenges are presented that night, we're going to have the skills to match up accordingly. If that's a guy top of the zone with ride at the top, we're going to be able to flatten out. If it's a sinker slider east west guy, we're going to be able to scoop. But on top of that, the nights where we need to score 11, we're going to slug. That's what the game's calling for that night. If it's a really tight ball game and one run's going to do it, we're going to have the opportunity to get a guy on first base, steal a bag, hit situationally, score that run. So don't try and dictate based off of each ballpark we're playing at. It's whatever is called for, we're going to be trained to execute.
Right.
I mean, obviously in theory, it sounds fantastic. You still have to have the skill level to be able to achieve that. But I think that as an overall arching philosophy, this seems like a obviously ideal situation here.
You know how happy I am that he said steal a bag instead of move a guy over? Like, I was, oh, thank God. Like, I was like fearing it. I'm like, oh no, here it comes. Don't say it. Like, don't say move a guy over. Yeah, please, no. But, like, it's fine. But yeah, no, I mean, I had kind of heard that like it was like mutual between him and the Orioles, but they like promoted a guy, I think. It was also like I talked to some Orioles fans who said that like I don't know, like people were just like a little bit upset with the fact that, they tried to hit for too much power apparently, like in Baltimore, and their bats went cold for like a 50 game stretch. And then I looked at that and there was like a 110 WRC plus as a team, which please like bring me that, please.
Yeah.
Like, that would be, like
slumping.
yeah. It was like, oh, they only had a 110 WRC plus as a team in the second half, and then they got shut down in 2 playoff games, which is just playoff variance essentially. So
yeah, and I mean the thing that we always said about Baltimore was they can hit, but their pitching's not that good. And had they, I don't know, maybe thrown some prospects to the White Sox for somebody like a Garrett Crochet, maybe they might not have been in this situation. But alas, here they are.
Because that's what people told me. They were like, "Oh, the pitching isn't why they lost. Like they lost because of the bats." I'm like, "Yeah, but like maybe they get a 5-game series if they had better pitching. They wouldn't have had to play in that wild card round." Is the point, right? But I don't know. It sounds like the new owner's going to spend some money there this offseason.
Yeah, I would think so. It's safe to say that James Fox is not a fan of lift small, bunt the ball.
I'm not. Yeah, I like ball go far, team go far.
Yeah, that's I'm right there with you.
Like,
So I figure since this is FutureSox, I figured we'd move away from the major league side of things here, and I figured we would get into the Baseball America article that came out with the Statcast info.
not gonna lie, I was a little bit surprised when I read it. Like, just because, so they released a whole bunch of Statcast stuff, like exit velo, that sort of thing. I'm just used to the White Sox being 28, 29, or 30, like all the time, like in and not non-pitching metrics and like hitting stuff, right? So this was pleasantly surprising.
Yeah. So basically, what Statcast, what Baseball America did is they came up with 5 different Statcast info points and ranked all of the farm systems by those Statcast points. The 5 things that they used were hit plus, the 90th percentile exit velo, contact percentage, chase rate, and barrel rate. For the White Sox ranked 14th in hit plus. They were 16th in 90th percent exit velocity, tied for 14th in contact percentage, 15th in chase rate, and 12th in barrel rate. So my takeaway from this is that the White Sox are basically, and this is before you get the hitting czar for the entire organization, the White Sox are completely average at everything, which before you say, well, of course they're average at everything, they could never be good at any one single thing. The thing that you kind of have to look at is that is not a negative. This is saying that they have at least, an average. There's nothing that they're terrible at, which is, in my opinion, is a plus. And when we get to the numbers of some of the AL Central teams here, which I'm going to also give to you, I think that it's definitely a positive. Your takeaway?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my takeaway is that maybe their hitting coaches are pretty good, and with resources and other stuff given to them, like they might even be better. I mean, I feel like Alan Zinter, minor league hitting coordinator, was a little bit in the shadows. I know both of us kind of knew Andy Barquette a little bit, so he, promoted a lot of our stuff and, not that, whatever, but I just think he was like out there, right? Like a lot of like his teaching style and like a lot of his stuff was like on the internet. And I know like a lot of players that were like, oh, this Andy Barquette guy's awesome and this and that. And like, I just feel like Alan Zinter might be too. I just don't really know much about him. You know what I mean? So, and they did add a lot of staff last year, and like we talked about like how the Rovers like went around quite often, and Wolco especially, and some other stuff, but yeah, I mean, apparently they're doing something right, because like it wasn't like this the couple years prior. And
Yeah,
it's not like they added a ton of bats either.
No, they didn't. We've seen interviews. If you guys do not follow AAA Jeff on Twitter, do us a favor, do him a favor, do yourself a favor. Follow AAA Jeff on X/Twitter. He did a couple of interview, like a couple of hits with Alan Zinter, and got some quotes from him. I've seen, I saw, watching all the minor league games, I'd see him pop up here and there in the dugouts. I don't know exactly how present he was. Like I heard a couple of varying things, like, that the roving guys were kind of MIA in a couple of spots. I'm not going to, throw out exactly where, but I heard that, like they weren't as omnipresent as you would like to hear. And, but I feel like, at least with Zinter here last year, I don't feel like they didn't, I don't know as if they necessarily progressed. I feel that with Barquette in previous years, I felt like I saw a little bit more improvement from a couple of guys. So the Zinter thing was kind of, I felt like at least he kept the line there and nothing was like hugely lost. I'm really looking forward to seeing how Fuller and Zinter work together to kind of, move things along here. What are you thinking here, James? I see you smiling here. So are we looking at
Uncle Ted has chimed in.
Has he? Edgar Caro and Corey Lee. Ben, we got a bunch of new names. Uncle Ted, you got to slow down here, man. We don't even have 80% of these players.
Yeah, I don't know how they would get any of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to give up a lot to get every single one of these guys.
I mean, Ben Rice might be possible.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying any of them wouldn't be possible. It's just you're going to have to give up something to get them, and I don't know if that necessarily the White Sox have enough to get it, certainly at least even 50% of those guys.
Yeah, they have like one player to trade right now.
Yeah,
and maybe
return value,
and maybe Davis Martin too.
Yeah, he'll.
I've been thinking about that since James Fegan brought it up. I was like, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to trade him, but I get it.
What if I told you they traded Davis Martin and Mason Adams gets the rotation spot? Yeah,
I'm listening.
That's what I thought. Yeah. But
all right, so I'm just gonna, if you guys do not have Baseball America, I'm just gonna go ahead and throw some numbers at you for this Baseball America Statcast info. I'm not gonna read you every single one. I'm just gonna give you a brief synopsis of what they say about every one of the other AL Central teams here. For Cleveland, they have plus contact and chase rate, but they have negative power. Basically, if you look through their stuff, basically anything that relates to contact or chase rate, everything is real fantastic. But if you look for barrel rate and 90th percentile exit velo, they are like near the bottom. So basically what you can think of is with Cleveland, what they're saying is that there is an army of Stephen Kwans coming for your children. As it relates to Minnesota, this is something that you're not going to want to hear. And this is where the podcast kind of takes a downswing here, is that they have great power and chase. The one thing that they are not fantastic is they have an average contact rate. So everything that they hit hard. They don't chase anything, and everything's barreled. So that's wonderful. As far as the Royals are pretty much right in line with the White Sox. They are pretty much average at everything. I will say, though, that the White Sox are generally a little bit better ranked on every single thing than the Royals are across the board. So when you come to Detroit, and this is the worst one out of all of them, is that they have the best hit plus, and they're top 10 in everything else. So be prepared. Detroit is bringing the legions to Major League Baseball.
Yeah, well, and they have Mark Connor. And so, they hired Mark Connor, who was AJ Preller's like scouting director for years in San Diego. And I believe they also hired their one of their farm director type guys too. And you can see it with their last 2 drafts. Detroit's last 2 drafts are like AJ Preller San Diego drafts with the number of super high upside prep type guys. Now they take a while to get to the big leagues, right? But if Max Clark and who's the guy, your favorite guy from Harvard Westlake, the shortstop. They took him this year. So
Bryce Rayner.
So they have Max Clark and Rayner. So it might be a while, right? But they're taking super high upside prep dudes.
Yeah, I was pretty upset when Detroit drafted Max Clark. Not gonna lie,
he's awesome.
Yeah, he's the guy that's just the right amount of cocky, as opposed to Bryce Rayner, where he stepped over the line for me. I was a little bit too much for me. So where I wanted to go from here is I wanted to get into the article that you just put out, which is dealing with the White Sox Rule 5 and the 40-man decisions that are coming up here in the next couple of days. Because if you are not aware, the whole deadline comes up on Tuesday for all that stuff. So go ahead and hit me here, James. Where are you going?
Well, so the roster's at 36, so they're probably fine. I don't think so it's weird because the non-tender deadline is Friday. And some teams will, I feel like, get out ahead of this thing and non-tender some guys early to make space, but I think 36 is enough space. One common misconception is they do not need the roster to be under 40 this week to make a Rule 5. It could be, their roster could be at 40 during the winter meetings. As long as they cut a guy the morning of the Rule 5 draft, they can draft someone. The Rule 5 draft is interesting. I always just think it's super interesting. They'll have the number 1 pick in the Rule 5 draft this year. There is no fall to the 10th pick nonsense rule in the Rule 5 draft, baby. So they're getting the best guy. At least whoever they perceive to be the best guy. But no. So Tuesday, teams have to protect players that would be otherwise. So you'd put them on your 40-man roster. That means then they're not Rule 5 eligible. So for the White Sox, there's one obvious name, Colson Montgomery. He will be added. I'm pretty sure they'll add Juan Carrilla too. And then after that, I think it's kind of a toss-up. I think they add Anthony Hoopy Tuniatoa.
Close.
Yeah. I'm going to go with AHT from now on.
Bubba
yeah. My guess is he gets added. And then, Varys, I would say no. And Trey McGough is possible. But I mean, this deadline's weird. It could just be they protect Gil Luna, and we're like, okay, I get it, right? And it's fine. But it's happened in the past. I think I said this last week when the White Sox protected Tanner Banks the 1 year after he was just like, kind of like a back end lefty starter. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then he came out of the bullpen and they got a prospect for him a couple years later. So, a surprise could come, but those are the 3 or 4 most likely names.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if they were to protect any one of those guys. Obviously Colson's going on the 40-man. There's no way he's not. But those other guys, there's some hit and miss guys there. Like Wilfred Veras. Like he's puts up some solid numbers every year. It's just the swing and miss is definitely a thing, and then you also have to worry about his defense. It's always the worry about him is that you don't know where you're going to be able to slot him, and he almost always slots in at first base or left field, even though he's never played any first base.
Yeah, it's tough. And then the question is like he's got power, right? But is he going to have enough in-game power to play either of those spots as a regular? And look, the thing about the Rule 5 draft is you have to keep this guy on your team in the big leagues the whole year. And I don't even know if the Marlins or A's could do that with Wilfred Veras. You know what I mean? You'd have to really like him to do that. Where if somebody really likes Trey Mago and you want to bring him to spring training, I mean, that's, that makes more sense. Or an AHT, right? Give him a 40-man roster spot, bring him to spring training. If it doesn't work, you give him back, that sort of thing. But I just think they're more likely to get taken.
Yeah, I think that the relief pitcher market for the Rule 5 is always, the possibility of somebody being taken that has plus stuff or a plus, fastball. I think that the likely odds of them sticking with the other team is always much greater than a position player that hasn't shown the, at least average all the way across the board, and then having one specific tool that was a standout, and I don't feel that Wilfred Veras really has one particular thing that sticks out that you're like, okay, this would make him a useful everyday player. Because the bat to ball isn't a plus tool,
right?
And the power's not great enough that you would be willing to overlook that.
Well, and the White Sox are a team that could take a chance on a guy. Last year. So last year, Cleveland took who's the first baseman from the Diamondbacks that led the minors in homers? Davison, De
Los Santos.
Yeah. So. Cleveland took him in the Rule 5 draft, and he went through spring training with them, and he wasn't going to make their team, so they gave him back to the Diamondbacks, and then he hits in the Pacific Coast League,
goes out and hits 42 home runs,
and then he got traded to the Marlins at the deadline for Tanner Scott, or no, it wasn't Tanner Scott, but it was somebody, because the Marlins made a deal with the Diamondbacks for somebody. You know who it was? It was the old left-handed AJ Puck is who it was.
Yeah, I was going to say it was a reliever.
It was in the AJ Puck trade. So, but yeah, I mean, those are the types of bats that the White Sox might be able to take with that first pick, or you get a starter or a high upside reliever. So we'll have a better idea this week of who some of those names that are potentially available will be, at least, though. He does.
Vince says, I like Preller. He has balls.
Yeah.
He does, for sure. And one of the things that, he comes from the scouting world. So he has, he does have the talent for picking guys up that have skill sets. The one thing that the Padres have shown year after year after year is that they can't develop pitching, and that's what's put them into the problems for the most part.
For the most part, yeah, but he drafts talent, and he's not afraid to trade it because he knows he'll just get another guy. There's always another draft and another international period, and that's the way he looks at it. It's not like some of this where you just prospect hug, even some of the stuff that's happening around baseball right now. The Cubs have 8 top 100 prospects, and they have a full lineup of players, right? That's the kind of stuff that AJ Preller doesn't do. He's I want, it's Tanner Scott, right? Who was with the Marlins. he's like, okay, I'll give you my top guys because I want to win a World Series. So that's just kind of how he is, because he'll draft more high schoolers next July, and he'll have a full international class full of guys that overachieve that he can trade later. So it's just kind of the way they operate.
Yeah. Like I don't have a problem with it, and I know this is something that I've talked about with Beefloaf as well, is that I don't have a problem with the roster churn at all. I find it interesting to let some of these guys go, because you only have 26 roster spots. You're only going to be able to fill so much. You're only going to be able to have so many pitchers. I just I want to see them continue to grab guys and take flyers on guys, and we'll see what happens here.
Yeah, I mean, they number one on the waiver wire all off season. So anybody they want, they should basically be able to get. The White Sox should, anyways.
Yeah, and if you guys don't subscribe to Baseball America, I would recommend it. There's if assuming you are a prospect hound, and if you are here, I don't really see why you wouldn't be. There's always some really great information now. They just released an article that's got a bunch of Rule 5 eligible guys that are in the AFL that are worth teams taking a look at. There's some really interesting names on that. Just some really awesome stuff. Thank you, Beeflo, for reminding me. If you are watching, please smash the like button, please. And as Trey Williams is also mentioning here, we are 6 subscribers away from 1,000. I have been working to whittle that number down for months. So if you are listening and you are not subscribed to us on YouTube, I would appreciate it if you would just hit that stupid little button and just hit the subscribe button so we can get to 1,000. It's been a goal for this season, so I would appreciate it. One other thing that I had on the list here was that the White Sox just signed a couple of Venezuelan players.
Yes.
I know that you know about this, so why don't you go ahead and lay some of this on us?
Well, it's funny because the one guy, Barotaran, he was like on my original list that I published like in January. So they must have never like officially signed him. So yeah, they signed 2 Venezuelans, $250K total. Who knows? The most noteworthy part is that they have roughly $740K remaining until December 15th. So my guess is they trade it for something. Roki Sasaki's coming. I don't know if anybody's heard. It's like seems to be all anybody's talking about. And I don't know if it's like up to him or who it's up to, like when he gets free. I know I won't be like the first person to talk about this, but like, so the Dodgers have money right now, and the Dodgers could trade for more money and get him like $4 to $4.5 million, something like that. And I've seen like the common refrain is that just kind of, oh, everybody's bonus pool's open in January, which is true, but it's not really true because everybody has commitments already. Like I've heard Ben Badler say this on a couple of shows. Like I forgot the guy's name, but the Mets have like the top guy signing with them, and it's like $5.5 million. So like they don't have the money to sign Roki Sasaki. So I do think like if he waits, yeah, I think there's a chance that if he waits till January 15th, it's the Cubs or the Padres or somebody we're not thinking of. But if he signs prior to December 15th, it's probably the Dodgers. And the White Sox could help nudge that along with the $740K that they basically have left in their bonus pool.
Yeah, I that's the only thing obviously I don't think the White Sox have anything else. There's no other bullets in the chamber here. I think they're pretty much tapped out at this point. So I would imagine that that money would be allocated somewhere else and probably traded somewhere to somebody like the Dodgers that would be needing that money to try and sign a guy who more than likely wants to sign with the Dodgers.
Well, and sometimes teams still need money just to like pay for their like original class. It's like weird. Like the market's weird. Like because you can pay them even though you don't technically have it in your pool. You just have until December 15th to get the money in your pool somehow. So yeah, like I'm sure they make a deal. Last year they made a trade with the Dodgers that has seemingly paid off. Because he just like keeps moving further and further up like in the system. And you saw him live last year, right?
Which one?
In the international trade with the Dodgers.
Aldrin Batista.
Yeah, Bautista. Because we haven't
Yeah, yep.
seen Martinez yet, but you saw Bautista,
Yeah.
or you
Yeah,
saw
so
person.
the Cannonballers game that I went to, I saw Gerald Perez's first game after he got traded over from the Dodgers, and Aldrin Batista was also the pitcher on the mound. So I got to see two of the Dodgers guys on the same night, and yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, no, I mean that's it's kind of twofold. Like, do you wish that they had agreements locked up so all the money was spent? Yes, you do, right? But I guess if you like run into a scenario where you've held money over for some reason and then you didn't sign some Cuban that fled the country, then you can trade it for Aldrin Batista.
Well, here's the one thing, right? So would I rather that they had all their money tied up into, different guys here and there? Sure. But if they withhold $1 million and don't spend it, and then they get guys like an Aldrin Batista or Maximo Martinez, where if you look at the prospect rankings from 2 years prior or a year prior, and you see them at the top of the lists, they signed with the Dodgers. All these guys signed with the Dodgers. If we hold on to that $1 million and we get last year's, top, two guys that are in the top 5 of the pitchers in the international market, I'm okay with that too. I'm fine with however they acquire them. Although, in the grand scheme of things, you want to have an organization that has their phalanges out there working all the different markets, finding these guys and working the relationships and developing these relationships so you can sign them and not have to do that.
Yeah. Do you think Roki Sasaki knows who the White Sox are?
I'm sure he's seen the hat because he probably saw Ice Cube wear it.
Oh, you know who his I think his manager was Tadahito Iguchi. That's the only link. I did see that.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so if like Tadahito Iguchi is like all of a sudden like Will Venable's bench coach, be like, ooh, this is interesting.
It would be interesting. I would not mind having Tadahito back. He was integral, I think, in that team and just how they played in general, and awesome spark plug.
Yeah, Kenny had a good offseason that year that I hated.
Hey, it happens. So one other thing actually that I spaced on, the Baseball America just released their podcast this week with our personal friend Carlos Colazo, who they reviewed the White Sox draft class from 2024. Did you have any takeaways from that you found interesting?
Yeah, so they're doing every division. I think it was actually there. It was a little bit. It was. I don't think it was this week, but it's still relevant. But so they talked about the White Sox first on the AL Central one. Yeah, I mean, Hagen Smith is good, like really good. They kind of raved there, and I think like, it's interesting because Carlos is a big Bonham guy, but we talked to Jim Callis, who isn't really a huge like Caleb Bonham fan. So it just kind of depends on what you think of him. Kind of skews the class a little bit just because he got $3 million when he signed. Like it was like such a huge chunk of their class. But Peter, Peter Flaherty really likes like college players. So he's like just very college heavy. And he seemed to be, we didn't see Nick McLean, but he was very high on Nick McLean off of an injury. So there's that. And then he just like likes some of the other hitters that they signed. But then one of the things he talked about, he loved the combination of Phil Fox and Aaron Combs. And we talked a ton about these relievers, like after the draft, how they were funky, and it's kind of what Bannister likes. And, Aaron Combs went out and he was really good, like in the system. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Aaron Combs is pitching at Double-A next year, like pretty quickly. And he's like kind of fast tracked a little bit. And Phil Fox had really good pitch metrics. And then they talked about the Blake Shepardson kid who went in the 11th. And one of the things they brought up was something that we talked about at the time. Just he was bad, like at the University of San Francisco. And college coaches try to win and they can't really afford it. And then he went to this draft league and was like unbelievable in like 5 innings or whatever. He had like 13 Ks and like barely any walks in 5 innings, and his stuff's really good. The White Sox used an 11th round pick on him, which is like a premium pick. So yeah, I just like think it's interesting that they have some of these guys. Once we get started up here going, I think, we'll see Bonnemer and Blake Larson for the first time in Arizona. They didn't play at all last year. Nick McLean didn't play at all last year. So we did get to see Antonacci and Saki a little bit in some of these guys, but that'll be interesting with Antonacci and Saki and some of the bats they took, getting them under the tutelage of Ryan Fuller.
Yeah, one thing that I took away from this thing that I thought was an interesting tidbit was that 7 of their college pitchers that they took all have a release point below 6 foot, which is an interesting thing. So it means basically if you're not thinking about this, like I do in my spare time, that all of these guys have lower slot release points, which is different than most teams. So it's something different. It is a different angle that the ball's coming in at, makes for all sorts of other interesting, things that happen. So
definitely something that Bannister. I mean, they did a waiver claim for that Penn Murphy. He's similar to, it's like a low slot righty who doesn't throw that hard, but I mean the stuff is kind of amplified a little bit because of the slot. So I don't think this is going away anytime soon. Just kind of what they have targeted.
Yeah, I don't disagree. That seems like something that they seem to be wanting to force into happening, is finding guys with all sorts of funky arm slots, and I'm here for it.
I will say too on that, like on the piece that you referenced about the Statcast data, something it said about the Dodgers. Did you catch that part? Where it said that it didn't count Jarrell Perez or any of the Miguel Vargas like minor league time for them. They would have been number 1, I think, by a ton. Like if it counted though, or if it had those guys like stayed basically. So obviously Miguel Vargas was horrible. Like after the White Sox got him in the majors, but there was a reason why they traded for him. It's because he walks a ton and smoked the baseball when he played in the minors for the Dodgers.
Yeah, he hit like something like 389 or something for the PCL Dodgers for Oklahoma City or whatever team it is.
An average exit velocity of a lot. I don't remember what it is right now, but
yeah, no, he's definitely there was something weird going on last year at the end of the year with Vargas, because I don't know whether, I mean, obviously I kind of think that it was a mental thing. Like he just felt like, discarded or something along those lines, that we've all seen the picture of him sitting in the dugout and looking just absolutely like, what the hell am I doing here? So I kind of imagine that it had something to do with that. And I will scroll up to your original here. Vince asked James, "You hearing anything on a crochet trade?" I know, I'm just bringing the full one.
No, I mean, I think it's going to happen, obviously. Like, I'd be stunned if they don't trade him. Now, that doesn't, I mean, I don't know when. I think, from just the little that I know, like, I know what everybody else has reported. They want bats. I think they'd like 2 bats to headline the deal. And I think they'd like not 18-year-old bats. I think they'd like a couple that, could be in Chicago fairly soon, right? I mean, I think if their best offer is 4 super high upside 19-year-old bats, then maybe they take that deal, but that's definitely not, I don't think, the focus. I think that's why we've heard a lot about Boston. I don't think we've heard a ton about the Cubs, but the Cubs make a lot of sense, like in my opinion, just with like what they could offer you. Obviously Baltimore makes sense. People have seen the Mets names, so I don't really think there is a favorite. The one thing I'll say at this point is, like, we've heard a ton about Boston. I think we've heard too much about Boston. I think at this point, if it's Boston, I'd be a little bit surprised, because we've just like heard them so often that feels like it's out there for a reason. If you made me guess, I would say it happens at the winter meetings, but I mean, I probably would have said the same thing about Cease last year, and I would have been way wrong on that. So I just kind of think this deal has to happen, and I think it'll shape the rest of what they do potentially. So I do think they'd like to do it if they can fairly quickly, like probably within the next like 6 weeks, I would say.
Yeah. You think it gets done before the end of the year?
I mean, your Bob Nightingales of the world say they want it done at the winter meetings, right? So I just, these teams that would be in the Crochet market, if it's not Crochet, are going to have to buy pitching, and they'll all be capable of buying pitching, right? So I feel like you're not going to want to like let all these pitchers sign, and then, you know what I mean? Like then you're in a bidding war with 3 teams for Crochet. I feel like you'd want to get that done and kind of figure out the rest of your off season. So I think it can happen at any time. I think like if the White Sox hear names that they want, they'll do it. They kind of have to do it at this point. They're not going to keep him. It doesn't really make any sense to, like, when, I don't want to say they can't pay him, because that's ridiculous and it lets ownership off the hook, but they're not going to pay him. So trading him right now makes a lot of sense.
Yep. Another question here from Trey. Here's a question: do they sign a free agent in the month of November?
Ooh, no.
I'd say if they do, it's a reliever, is just my thought.
Yeah, I mean, you might see more of the Justin Dunn type signings, maybe, like where it's like some post hype, like minor league signings all leak out right now. I'll say no. I mean, we'll get news next week, right? Like on roster decisions, but I doubt it's a free agent signing.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I'm not sure if anybody's got, like, I don't know if any of the big, like your top 10 guys, I don't know if any of those guys signed prior to December.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, we've seen these off seasons drag out until like March, so I'm not gonna bank on anybody signing. Certainly in December.
Jeez, what's all these questions now? I mean,
yeah, I know. Where were you guys earlier?
We're like getting bombarded here.
Thoughts on Angels stealing all of Getz additions, Newman, d'Arnaud, and Hendricks?
I don't think d'Arnaud was it. I'm curious to see what they do at catcher, because I think it's going to be Carroll Lee, but maybe not from the beginning. Yeah, the Angels have done a ton. I feel like that Perry Manasian is like working like Alex Anthopoulos did. He worked under him before, so maybe he's like taking a page out of Anthopoulos, Preller, and who's in Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, all this work, man, those 80 wins are going to be awesome.
Yeah, like they're doing a ton.
Like, yeah, I don't know.
Newman I thought was going to be pretty good, and he's just kind of like, okay. They got Soler too. They made a trade. Yeah, Dipoto. Thanks, Beef. Yeah, Dipoto, Preller, and Anthopoulos. Those dudes just like itch to make trades. Like
people on Twitter saying Jason Dominguez is on the table for Crochet.
Okay. Well, I mean, look, that's like probably the only way the Yankees can get him. So
how do you feel about Jason Dominguez?
I feel a lot better about him than I do Spencer Jones.
Fair enough. On that note, you have been watching the FutureSox podcast. If you are listening to this in podcast form, know that on YouTube and on the Purple app that we do stream this every Sunday night at 8 p.m. You can find all of our written content on FutureSox.net. If you are looking for minor league video highlights, you can hop on the X at FutureSox, and you can find all of those highlights there. We appreciate you guys so much. Thank you guys for coming and hanging out in the comments. Absolutely awesome. Thank you for the questions. Thanks for the interaction. Drive the show. We appreciate you guys a lot. My name is Ian Eskridge at Daily White Sox. He is James Fox at James Fox 917. We appreciate you guys. You guys have a great week, and we will talk to you soon. Unless something crazy comes up, maybe we pop on. We'll see. Thanks, guys. Have a great week. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.